Hello and welcome to this interview with brothers Kenny and Kris Klein from the band One-21 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam McIntosh, also known as Adam Grant from back in the day, and I'm in Houston, Texas. So I'm very thankful for technology like Zoom that can make this possible. Kenny and Kris, I appreciate you guys for agreeing to do this. This is exciting for me, and I hope for many others as well. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. So guys, the band has reunited after about 15 years. One-21's farewell show was in 2005 at the Cornerstone Festival. And so now after 15 years, the band has gotten back together to record a 5-song EP, which was released on May 29th. And that's really what has brought about this interview, to talk about the reunion, the EP, and maybe future plans that you might have. So first off, tell me, when was it that you began considering a reunion? And was there a particular motivation for it? You know, why now after all these years?
I think for a long time after we broke up, we didn't really break up officially, but we had a show. I don't know. It just ended somehow. I left and I got married and stuff and all that. But I always kind of felt like, why stop? Why did we stop? And why don't we just start it up again? I always kind of had that in the back of my mind. 2010, it was just like, we could be doing this. Why not? Like, and, but it just never happened. And I don't think Tom was interested in doing it. I was kind of always like, Vince moved out to California and all that stuff. So, I always kind of thought, why did we stop? We should have kept going. All these other bands kept going and doing shows and putting out albums and stuff like that. So, I really wanted, I started this label because I have a studio at my house, and I just really wanted my friends' bands to have an outlet, and local bands like to have an outlet for putting out their music. And I figured it's fairly easy to do nowadays, just putting it right online and recording it fairly quickly. And I kind of wanted to do it like, in a kind of a DIY punk rock way. Like we have a humble studio. It's not loaded with thousands of dollars of gear, and well, it has thousands of dollars, but not tens of thousands of dollars. But it's a nice place to come record, and I kind of just wanted to get people out of the the shadows and kind of bring them back. And I was like, 121, like, why don't, like, I really like, for one of the songs that we had before we broke up, I really liked, and I always thought we should have recorded it somewhere along the way and put it out. And I don't know. I think that's my main motivation, is like, I never understood why we stopped. And now's as good a time as any to start it back up. I just kind of always, and it feels like a perfect time to start it back up, considering the climate that we're in and stuff. And I just feel like I don't know. We Kenny and I have a lot of opinions, and so does Tom, and we just decided to start writing songs, and we just started to get together and write songs, and it kind of formulated into, like, you heard the EP now, and it's kind of like it's about what it's about, because that's kind of who we are. And I don't know, it just seemed like kind of important to speak our way a little bit.
So I take it then that, Kris, you were kind of the guy to sort of try to get the band back together. Did it take any convincing for the other guys? Kenny, were you on board right away, or what about Tom?
Christopher, none of us ever really stopped making music, I guess. Like, I had another band for a little while, and Tom had FangFang for a while, and I eventually joined FangFang. We never, none of us, and Christopher was doing stuff, writing stuff on his own, and recording. He just had a studio in Germantown where I live, and then we've always kind of still been doing music, but Christopher did a bunch of reunion shows with Squad 5-0, and I remember him coming back and just being like, we need to record some songs. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. So we kind of it kind of like coincided, I guess, a little bit with his label and the launch of the label. And it didn't take much convincing to get me to do it. I don't think. Like I was like, sure. I mean, it was hard to do because I hadn't written any songs in a really long time, like lyrics and stuff. And it wasn't like, like when we were going strong, I had a notebook with me all the time. I was constantly just writing things down as I thought of them. And then I hadn't done that in 15 years or more, So it was kind of it was a little bit hard getting back into the groove of it. And I think that I still could, I wasn't really fully there even with this one. But anyway, Tom was a little bit harder of a sell. He wasn't. He really likes what he's doing, and I don't think that he's not a very nostalgic kind of guy. And like even a song that he wrote for the band he's currently in, if it's too old, he doesn't even want to play it. He only wants. It's kind of like how, and it's how he always was with 121. Like we would go on tour, and when people would want us to play songs from Dragon or something like that, like he was like. He never really wanted to do it. He always wanted to do the newest thing we've done, because to him, that was sort of the most important thing. Because this is who we are now. Like we did that already. Now this is what we're doing, which I kind of appreciate to some degree. But he wasn't as willing of a participant in this project as Christopher. Definitely was. It was like they were on both ends. Like Christopher did most of the writing, most of the recording, and we came in and kind of helped collaborate. So,
well, the EP has been released. It's called "Say It Loud," and it's 4 original songs plus a Johnny Cash cover. And I must say the songs are great. I've listened to them several times now, and there's a ton of stuff going on in these songs. There's so many different layers of instrumentation, which is really cool. People really need to listen with their headphones on to catch it all. But really put out something unique. And I was especially impressed by all the vocal parts and harmonies that are going on. That definitely seemed to be, there definitely seemed to be more of that than on previous albums, which I think is pretty cool. Were there any particular inspirations for these songs, whether musically or lyrically? Take your pick, or both. Anything that comes to mind as a big influence as you guys were writing these?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Like I was as far as musical influences, I know lyrical influences. Like Kenny and I spent a lot of time like talking. When we would get together, we would probably spend 3 to 4 hours together. The first 2 hours would always be talking about what's going on, and it had nothing to do with music. And we'd be sitting there. I'd be holding a guitar and everything, and we would be supposed to be doing music and writing songs. But I look at it as very valuable to kind of get on the same page and kind of like assess what's going on, what you're going to be writing about. And it wasn't intentional that we were going to be writing about what we were going to be talking about, but we just talked about things. And then out of those conversations and talks came a lot of the lyrics and the inspiration for the lyrics. And it kind of like, I feel like musically, I've always had the same influences. Most of it's American rock and roll music, and it goes all the way through punk rock. I kind of think of it as folk music, like a folk art. Maybe that's wrong, but I kind of think of it that way anyway. But so it's that kind of gives me a little license to do like kind of like what you're saying. Like I did like layers and things. I was listening to a lot of early 60s and late 50s rock and roll, and like listening to it in my headphones at work and stuff like that, and hearing like like Chuck Berry and stuff like that. Hearing Bobby Fuller, like I Fought the Law or something like that.
Yeah.
Like those recordings are amazing to me. Early recordings and chord structures, I just kind of like. I like kind of, I don't know. I kind of been listening to Link Ray a lot and stuff like that, and a lot of stuff from the 60s and 50s. So, and then all the way up through like, The Clash and Rancid and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Awesome.
And then there's always that influence of like the stuff I grew up listening to, like Minor Threat and like Fugazi and Gorilla Biscuits and stuff like that. All the hardcore and punk and New York hardcore and DC hardcore and post-punk and East Coast punk rock, West Coast, whatever, all that stuff. But it's always kind of like, I think if you listen to the record, you probably can pull out a lot of earlier rock and roll influences somehow. I at least I can hear it, but that's me.
Yeah,
so.
no, that makes perfect sense. Kenny, what about you in terms of lyrics, especially? Was there anything particularly that helped some of your lyrical content?
Yeah, it's funny, lyrical content. Like I like, I don't want this to come across like I write like these people. I don't think I have the talents or the skill that a lot of people do. But like Christopher and I like for a little while I was just doing a lot of Marty Robbins, and like I don't know that it was so inspiring in a sense that like to emulate, but more inspiring. Just like I just like the sort of like cleverness of his lyrics and like the or of his music or whatever. I just enjoy it a lot. So that was kind of like I was thinking about stuff I was listening to for the record, and it was like I was listening to like the second Rancid self-titled album, which is kind of like that hardcore record. It has a black and white cover. Didn't seem very popular at the time, but it's really, really good.
Yeah, it's excellent.
And I know, and Tom really loves it too. And he's kind of like when it first came out, I was like, I wasn't really into it, and Tom was like, no, it's a good album. So I was listening to that and Marty Robbins and just kind of like other weird stuff. I think more of what inspires me when it comes to content for lyrics is probably just like dealing with the normal day-to-day stuff, right? Like being confronted with information that I question. Like I think I'm a natural skeptic, and I tend not to believe just about everything I hear. So I'm always like suspicious of information that I receive. So I have kind of strong beliefs about stuff, and I think that there's a lot of dishonesty out there.
Here we go.
Obviously, you can tell by like the the first song, "Don't Fear the Liars." It's like I think it's kind of a layered meaning with like what like fractal truths, I guess, or something where like I believe in the truth of the Bible, and I think that people who I think it can stand against criticism. So that's sort of part of it. The truth is a powerful weapon, and I think we just need to be honest and tell the truth. Yeah. So I don't know. The idea of truth has been really important to me. Most of my life, and most even more so in the last 10 years. So yeah. Yes.
Well,
yeah.
that's pretty evident, especially with not only with the first song, "Don't Fear the Liars," but also the song "Right and Wrong," which has kind of an sort of anti-news media vibe to it. That's what you were saying.
This is a nice thing for me, as I can. These are lyrics that I sing, right? But Christopher and Tom actually wrote this song, which I think we're all kind of vibing on the same sort of sort of ideas. You know, like we've always, you know, I think we've always challenged popular narratives. Like I think, you know, even with our older songs, I think that we like to challenge the status quo or the commonly held or whatever, you know, viewpoints of whatever it is. Like, you know, and I think it's probably written, you know, and this is going, I sometimes I don't like to talk like this because it sounds so
just do it. It's fine.
But you know, sometimes I think it's written for ourselves, right? Like, as much as it is for other people. Like, you know, we need to be willing to be wrong about something, right? Or we need to be willing to change our minds, you know, when new information or whatever comes up. So I don't know. I mean, I don't trust, you know, I don't trust media. I take everything they say with a grain of salt, and you know, you can look across all sorts of outlets, and you'll find just as many outlets as there are. You'll have you know, facts and information and truth. It's like, or what's claimed to be truth. It's like, I don't know, how do you determine anymore? I don't even know. You know, like you can.
Well, I think Don't Fear the Liars is kind of like, well, we wrote Right and Wrong first, and it was kind of like a more of a slam, kind of out of frustration, because like it's kind of almost like you don't know. There's so many people trying to just deceive people out there, and it's kind of hard to know what to believe anymore. But you kind of like, I think it's kind of, maybe it's speaking to the biblical truth, like we know what's right and wrong. But like also, I think the answer to that, I think I was telling you earlier, was Kenny said something about like when we were vibing for like 2 hours before our writing sessions, it was kind of like Don't Fear the Liars kind of like, I think is the song that kind of came out of that, because it was kind of got into well, if we know the truth, what do we have to fear, kind of thing. And it's kind of like the truth never changes, and it always comes out. So
Don't Fear the Liars. I think it was such a great comeback song. Honestly, it's
thanks.
It's you know, hits powerfully. The lyrical content is very invigorating, encouraging. You know, and I think that's great. I really like the line, "Your birthright is your victory." I think that's pretty cool, and I'm assuming there's sort of a religious theological connotation to that, or something different you'd like to expand on that.
No, that's absolutely right. I think that you know, it's funny because sometimes it feels like we say a lot of the same things throughout our music in sort of new and creative ways, and I think that I think that we have victory in Christ, and I think that's your birthright as a believer. So it's irrelevant what happens anywhere else outside the outside world. None of it matters, because you know, you have that security, and that's your birthright. That's it. You're victorious. It's done. So like, it doesn't matter, you know, if my city's burning, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, who's elected. It doesn't, you know, these things are not, they're of little consequence, you know, you know, it's in the eternal sense. It's like, it's a, you know, it's a flash. It's gone. No, I was going to say, back to the music for 1 second. You know, Christopher was talking about folk music and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Brian Gray. You mind if I say this, Chris? I don't know if this is but our friend Brian Gray, he said, he told Christopher that we were Americana punk. That was this, you know.
Americana
I think it makes sense to know what Christopher's saying, you know.
Yeah. Well, when you have a CD with the American flag on it, you know,
Oh, look at that.
that's pretty Americana, right? So that's good. So I'm curious, with the 4 original songs from the EP, are all of them brand new, or are any of them older songs that you just never finished or never recorded?
Scars is an older song that was written right right before I left the band, that I didn't really have part in writing until now. I added some things to it, since like I added the bridge to it or whatever, not to try to take credit, not that it matters, but that, as far as I know, that's the only. I did have the riff for Don't Fear the Liars from a long time ago, and it was one of those things where I had totally forgotten about it, and I literally like sat down out of the blue, like picked up a guitar and started playing it, like, and it was just kind of like one of those things. I'm like, oh, we should use that, because I liked it. I liked that part, and I liked the dynamics of it, like kind of the weird all major chord thing with it's a strange chord progression, and I kind of liked it. It fit every way.
Well, Scars, I really like that song. I think the intro and outro to that song is particularly pretty cool, kind of experimental, maybe, I guess, is the right word.
It's funny. So it has like a 2-chord, not to simplify it. I really was experimenting with that. And I was sending tracks back and forth to Kenny, and we were just talking about it, and just kind of like that happened. You know what I mean? It was just like one of those things, and it was just like I want to say, like, most of the things on the record, a lot of them are the either the first take or the second take. Like, they're just, and a lot of improv. Like, I just you kind of have an idea of what you want to do going in, but you just kind of do it. Like, all the guitar solos are just off the cuff, and I just, it's just kind of the way I work with that. And it kind of happened a lot with this other parts too, like the guitar lines or the bass lines or something like that, or the drum parts. It's just like, they just kind of happened, and they're not overthought. So I kind of like rolling with that, like trying not to overthink everything. Even though I have a tendency to overthink it afterwards, like whether it's the right thing to do. But like when I'm recording and writing parts, they just kind of come out. And I think that's kind of the way we work. So
that's awesome.
It's always been like that, even in my other bands and stuff. And I think it's just kind of like, I don't know, I kind of like the moment in time happening of music. I don't try to write every note, because it's kind of like, to me, it's just an expression, and I'm not like Mozart. I'm not gonna, like, I don't know how he wrote, but it's not every note is orchestrated.
Right. Well, you mentioned improv, which I always remembered that of you, whether it was 121 or maybe solos at squad shows. It seemed like a lot of times you weren't doing exactly whatever was on the albums. You were even live doing a lot of improv, which I thought was
like, that's what's kind of great about shows and things, is that like if you're seeing everything exact, it's kind of like, I mean, unless it's like, I don't know, maybe particularly impressive skill wise, like seeing, some amazing cello player. I like to see something almost different every time too, because that's kind of like rock and roll punk. It should be a little bit unpredictable and dangerous, and I kind of always wanted that. And I would always throw, like, I had no idea what I was doing with some of the stuff, like with pedals and things, and I would just throw things down on the stage, and and like sometimes the sound would be different. It would inspire you. I like to be inspired in the moment, because when you're writing, that's what happens. So that's the feeling I feel like I'm trying to create whenever I play anything. So like, it might be a little different. So like, awesome. I guarantee you, if we played any of these songs live, I don't even know what I would do. Like, because I don't even know what I did on everything on the record. So
the EP is put out by the Philadelphia Recording Service, which is the studio label owned by Kris and his wife Jamie. you've got, you know, the 121 release, you've got some other releases, and it's a studio label, which is kind of, you know, a unique thing. You know, is this something where it's just kind of an invite-only thing for friends? Or, you know, as a label, you know, are you accepting demo submissions, you know, and stuff like that?
Yeah, you know, we hadn't thought too much about it. I think we will accept demos and stuff like that if people would want to do that. I just like the idea of kind of creating a label based on like a community of our, like I started it with a community of our friends who play music. So,
Right.
But it's not exclusive. It's just that's just the way I had to kind of start. So because everybody was kind of not doing much. I know FangFang was doing stuff, but it just kind of made sense. Like I was like, well, what if we kind of all banded together and started a community of musicians to come record? And I like the idea of doing EPs, like 5-song, kind of more quick turnaround recording, and kind of more go with the philosophy of the moment in time for people, because like I think the kind of the current state is like maybe it's not, but I feel like it is that people try to generate 12 songs, 40 minutes of music that is perfectly curated and well thought out and takes 2 years to develop. Like I kind of like wanted to get away from that, because I feel like music for me is more in the moment inspired, and I feel like that should be kind of the direction more people should be going in, because I think that I think I maybe I was inspired by Joe Strummer in that way, like with like Sandinista or something like that, where I think I heard him talking in an interview one time where he said, you know, we would just pick up this and that and then start, and that would be a song, and then we would just record it. And it was kind of like it just kind of like, that's how I work. Cause like I'll go sit down and not have a thought in my head about music, but play something, and it'll be this thing. And it's not totally intentional all the time. And I wanted this place to be a little bit like in the 60s, like, you know, kind of song mill kind of thing. That's why I kind of like the idea of an open room and everybody kind of playing together. And I had many people over playing together in the same room. It can be crazy and cacophonous, but
in addition to the EP coming out, you've also had some shirts for sale online with some pretty sweet designs. What about plans for the future, like particularly live shows, concerts? I know that might be hard to plan given the current coronavirus situation, but is there anything you can tell us on that front?
Well, we had a show in the works back in, it was supposed to have happened in, well, I guess it would be, we were talking about June, and then we were talking about July, and we were talking about, you know, having these big extravaganzas. I was going to have The Blamed. I was going to have, you know, Element 101 and Spoken in Tongues get over here, and you know, Billy Powers' new band,
his band, yeah,
and we were going to have 121 Squad and Gasoline Heart play. And maybe the Huntingtons, but we could never align with the Huntingtons. They were going on tour and stuff. But it never happened because, you know what happened.
Sure, the situation. So those plans, I guess, are then just kind of temporarily on hold. Is that right?
It's on hold, but I kind of see it unlikely that 121 is going to do a show unless we do it without Tom. But I don't know how. Actually, Kenny and I haven't really talked about it, and I don't know who we would do it with. But I think that would be it would be unlikely unless maybe we got some kind of money or something, and we could pay Tom, convince him. I don't know.
So Tom is that disinterested, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to totally speak for him, but that's what I gather. It's just like.
Gotcha.
He's not interested in doing anything old or being nostalgic, and I'm just like, I don't look at it as like nostalgic as a thing of the past. I just look at it as something we should have always been doing. So I have a different mentality.
Gotcha. Well, if 121 does do a show, please let us know in plenty of time, because I know a lot of people would love to make it out to that. Okay, so as much as I want to talk about the present and future plans, I also want to talk about the past. Kris, you've mentioned nostalgia a few times, and so maybe we can kind of go down memory lane just a little bit. We'll start all the way back to the mid-1990s. 121 originally started out with Kenny on vocals, Tom Manns on bass, Paul Sanders on guitar, and Vince Radcliffe on drums. Kris, you joined up a little later as a second guitarist.
Yeah.
Kenny and Tom had been in an earlier band called Uzziah, and 121 basically formed from the ashes of Uzziah, which, by the way, I am a proud owner.
Oh my gosh.
The Uzziah
Oh my God.
Space Dog cassette.
Where did you get that?
You guys remember selling these on tour?
I remember.
Wow.
I thought it was not that big of a deal at the time, but now doing this, it's like, all right, now they're going to resurface, and it's going to be somewhat embarrassing. But
Hey, man,
we were in high school. I don't know.
Your secret is safe with me, okay? I'll keep it.
Thank you. Well,
All right.
yeah.
Well, so once 121 formed, you guys had a good, 10-year run. You had 5 different releases and multiple tours. You're on different record labels: Sofa, Flying Tart, Bulletproof, and then Face Down. You guys were from the Philadelphia scene, which had other great bands like Speedy Delivery and Pink Daffodils. Kenny's wife, Sarah, was the singer for Pink Daffodils. And I, for one, thought that whole scene was totally cool. And I've been following it from a distance since I was about 12 years old. My first introduction to 121 was from the Starball Contribution compilation CD. Do you guys remember that?
I remember that name, Starball. I wasn't in the band yet, though. I don't think.
Had Jehovah's Strength on it. It was such an eclectic mix of songs on there, but it introduced me to you guys, to the Huntingtons, to Joe Christmas, a bunch of different bands like that. And then you guys eventually got signed to Bulletproof. And personally, for me, when you guys got signed to Bulletproof, it was like the stars had aligned. I was a huge Bulletproof fan. Squad 5-0, Johnny Respect, Dear Ephesus, Tenderfoot, Spud Gun, World Against World, that whole scene. And when you guys got there, it was awesome, because it was like all of my favorite bands were in one place, But Bulletproof ended up folding. And then you guys signed to Face Down, which was a huge accomplishment. And from a fan's perspective, you guys just seemed to keep progressing, getting signed to bigger labels and putting out better albums. And so tell me your take on all of that. When you look at the band's history, do you think you kept progressing, or was there a certain era, a certain album, or even a label maybe that you look back and you think, well, that was the best or your favorite?
First of all, I appreciate your take on it. That's not a, there's a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot, obviously we're only, we're a small band. But the Dragon albums seem to be our probably best sort of most well-received album. So there are a lot of people that when the self-titled one or the flag one came out, they were a little bit disappointed. But that era is definitely that's definitely my favorite. I liked I loved being on Face Down Records. Jason Dunn is a he and I were really good friends, or at least that's how I took it. We spoke on the phone a lot. They did a lot of things for us. They flew us out to California on different occasions for Face Down Fest and our record release. And he really you know, we used to have shirts that said family on them, and that was sort of, I think that was the way it felt to be on FangFang Records, because it felt like we were in the family. Like we would go to, we would go to shows out there with the other bands. We would tour with some of the other bands, and at FangFang Fest, like everybody, we had a lot of fun with all the guys from all the other bands, and at the time, that was definitely my favorite era, especially around our first FangFang release. I thought it was probably the best we ever were as a band. We were never tighter. We were never, I don't know. It was good. And I mean, we had Adam Garbinsky with us, and having him play was a lot of fun. He was a good friend of ours. We loved having him around. And I thought we played well with him while he was in the band, not because of him, but like that time we were playing a lot. We were just, it was the best. It was the best we ever were, in my view. We're on a consistent basis. We were like, every night I was like happy with our performances, and like just had a lot of fun. And I like those songs a lot, and I like that era. I guess it was like we released it in 2001, and it was kind of like, it was just fun. Like we played around Philadelphia a lot. We did touring. That was a good time.
Yeah, we did a lot of shows, I felt like, and it was it was a lot of fun. I remember it just felt like we were clicking a lot, and I appreciate the comments on progressing too, because I think that was kind of like, it wasn't like we intended on progressing, but we kind of like, we generally like to, change it up, and
right.
Obviously the next record was not to get ahead of you, but it was weirder, and
we'll get there.
But I really liked that era as well. Well, I wasn't in the band when the Dragon thing was recorded. I was the tail end of it. I remember they left to go record it, and I wasn't in the car with them. So, but shortly after we went on tour, and that was my first tour. Yeah,
awesome.
The Flag felt like a new thing. The Flag record.
I did solicit some fan questions for this interview, and one fan asked this. Said, you guys have come a long way from Sofa Records. Do you still stay in touch with the Sofa family, and how are they doing? Do you guys ever have connections with the Sofa guys?
Yeah, I mean, we're not as close as we were, obviously. Like when we were doing Sofa Records, Bob and I everything we did at Kinko's. All of our printing, everything. So we would stay up. Kinko's was open 24 hours at the time, and like the mid to early to mid 90s, and we would just go there. I don't even know if they have Kinko's around anymore. But we would go at Kinko's. We would you run in photocopies of the 7-inch covers and the zines and the advertisements, the flyers, all that stuff. We would just run them, and then we would go back to his house. We'd stuff them in the envelopes. And we would cutting and pasting. Bob and I spent a lot of time together, and we've been we've been close, and we both have families now, and your life kind of changes when all of us have families, and your habits, and you start spending time with your wife's family, and then you have children and all that kind of stuff. So we've kind of drifted apart, but we do still see each other on occasion. A couple of years ago, we went out to see an Eagles game, and different things like that. Like we're relatively close. And I text them, often enough, not every day, but pretty often. And I'm married to Sarah from Pink Daffodil, so
of course,
we're a Sofa band.
That's awesome.
We're close with her.
That's of course you are. Yeah, that's great. Well, I was going to ask about touring, and when you think about your touring life, were there favorite places for you to play? And really, I wondered if there were ever any hot spots of 121 fans. Were there certain cities where you had a notable fan base more than others, perhaps?
There are a lot of places around this country that we love. One of the best places we ever we ever played. Like one of the best shows we ever did was in California. Like we always had great shows at the Showcase Theater in Pomona, I think, in California. That's where it is?
Corona.
Or where it was in California.
It's
Corona or Pomona?
Corona. Pomona was a glass house.
Corona. Yeah, it was. So we love there, and then we, throughout the whole country, like we've had great shows. But I would say two notable places would be the Showcase Theater and Spruce Pine, North Carolina. So I want to give a shout out to those guys, my buddies down there.
Revolution Radio. Plug their products. Hi-Fi Soap is actually really good. They should Justin's work is awesome. Check them out. Very
cool. Well, you guys were for some crazy mishaps on tour. One fan, here's another fan question. What are your opinions on the U-Haul trucks as an alternative method of transportation? And that's obviously referencing the infamous U-Haul tour when you rode in the back of a U-Haul truck across the country, and you guys do reference that in your song Tour from the Grenade album. So
that's amazing.
When I heard that story, that's crazy. I can't imagine. I just can't believe you guys did that. It sounds horrible.
It was terrible. Like you kind of almost think that I think there was like a couple days there where I just don't remember, because it was just like, you're in the back of a U-Haul. You're not supposed to be there. It was way too hot. It would be dark. It was just really confusing. It was terrible. Don't do it. If you want my opinion, don't do it.
Awesome. Years ago, on an old Decapolis interview that you did, you talked about a house show where you were pulling out tiles in a bathroom to find the money from the gig. Do you remember that?
Oh my God, yeah. We were on tour with the Kick, and we were in. I want to say we were in Iowa. I don't remember if it was Rapid City, Iowa. I don't remember the name of the city. But we were in Iowa, and the place we were playing was some kind of punk rock house or apartment above a bar where the patrons of the bar were not really pleased with what was going on upstairs. It was somewhat of a hostile environment, and the party it was a house party, and they had gotten a keg of beer, and they were charging money to get in, and the guy who was holding the door said that he hid the money in the bathroom above the ceiling tiles in the bathroom. So Lewis and I from the Kick, we were like, all right, where's the money? So we're in there when we're pulling the ceiling tiles down, and it turned out that he didn't hide the money there. He actually spent it on another keg of beer. So we didn't get paid. We just didn't get paid that night.
That's horrible.
It was a mess.
Would you say that that's the craziest show you've ever had, or were there crazier shows than that?
There was a crazier show than that. We played at a place, and it was called, oh man, I can't remember what it's called. It was called like Sin something. It was in San Antonio, Texas. I remember it very, very vividly. And there was a band that drove all the way down. They drove like 7 hours from Oklahoma, and they weren't on the show. Their goal was just to get on the show if they could. So they were begging with the bands. They're pleading with all of us, please, just let us play. And us, nobody else would allow them to play. And I think, we had a little bit of a soft heart for them or whatever. And we said, yeah, you guys can go on before us. So we got set up, sound checked on stage, ready to go. And we were sitting on the stage. I believe we're sitting on the stage behind the drums, waiting to go on. And this other band, I forget what they were called. They set up on the floor in front of the stage, and the guy stripped down to his boxer shorts, and then he proceeded to urinate all over the club. So the sound guy shut the sound off, and he came up to grab to get the microphones because they were going crazy, and the guitar player actually hit him with his guitar, hit the sound guy, and he blocked it with his arm. His arm was bleeding all over the floor. They called the police. The singer ran away into the night, just disappeared, and everybody else I think got arrested, and we didn't get to play. So that might be the craziest show we've ever done.
And you were just trying to be nice to them and give them a spot on the gig, and that happened. You weren't even able to play.
That's how I remember it. That's how I remember it. Yeah. I think Vince, because Vince was Vince was very, very much was a real nice guy, and he was like, I think he was like, just let them play, and we decided, we thought maybe it'd be a good Christian witness. I don't know what we thought, but we let it happen, and it was in hindsight, it was obviously a mistake, but yeah, that might have been the craziest.
All right, well, let's talk about band members. Members have come and gone throughout the band's career, and so I wanted to touch on this a little bit. Paul Sanders, he left the band at some point after the Dragon album, and I've never known much about Paul, but he was a pretty important member, even with songwriting credits in the liner notes. So what was the reason for Paul's departure?
I mean, I kind of feel like he expressed, maybe a little bit, maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of always felt like he expressed that he was not interested in the direction we were going. I felt like he was kind of always a little bit leaning away from the sound we ended up becoming by the self-titled record, and leaning more towards like a, being more aggressive punk rock, like GBH or something like that. Like maybe a little more like the first record, where it's more just dark. And I think that was his kind of like tendency, and we wanted to be more Americana punk. So
I think there's some truth to that, if I remember correctly, because I remember when he heard the self-titled album, he said something to me like, he's like, yeah, he's like, it's a lot better than I thought it was going to turn out. No hard feelings. We didn't leave on any kind of bad terms. Like, I mean, I still consider Paul a friend. I don't think we had a falling out. I don't think it was like a bitter, weird thing. I do think that he just was kind of like, he was a little bit older than us. He's probably, I mean, he's much older than Christopher. So I think there might have been some of that maybe at play, because like we were kind of like wanted to do more, and we didn't have as much responsibilities as him, because he was a little bit older than us, and I just think it was not working out. I don't think
sure.
But I love Paul. I think he's real good, and I still keep in touch with him to some degree as well.
Paul's great, man. Great guy.
Well, it's interesting because, he didn't record on the self-titled album or on Grenade, but he's still credited for songs that are on those albums. We'll Meet Again and Ghetto Blaster. And I was curious, were those songs that you wrote together when he was still in the band, or did he keep helping you guys co-write behind the scenes?
No behind the scenes stuff. They were just songs. Like Ghetto Blaster was definitely not finished when he was in the band, but I think the music was written, and we used some stuff that we wrote with him. So gotcha. And then We'll Meet Again, it's sort of like about Paul in a way, and also was written by him, which felt appropriate, because it's it was just like, we'll meet again. It's like we're splitting ways, but we'll meet again. So it's another one of those ones. Like it's a bunch of different truths in the or ideas.
That's cool.
In one song. So yeah.
Okay, so when Paul left the band, you got Adam Garbinski as a replacement, and he played on the self-titled album and did some shows with you. Adam, of course, was from other bands like Speedy Delivery, Huntington's, and Squad 5-0, which, of course, Kris was also in. And I thought it was super cool when you guys had Adam. because, you know, I've been a fan of his since Speedy Delivery, and then obviously Squad 5 So it was like my favorite bands were merging. You know, Chris and Adam were both in my two favorite bands, which I thought was really cool. And you've already mentioned, Kenny, that, you know, I mean, Adam's a great songwriter, but he didn't have a big hand in writing any of those songs from the self-titled album, which I think maybe some people assumed he did. You know, if there's was that an assumption?
Yeah, I remember there was a we got it. There were, in fact, I think we might have read it the other day in an old magazine. There was a review of the album, and it said Adam Grabinski makes his presence known on the new 121 album. And I was like, it just bothered me because I don't want to say he didn't do anything, but like those songs were virtually fully written before he ever joined the band. And I love Adam. He's a good friend of mine, and I would welcome. You know, I think he wrote parts. But like virtually all of the songs were done.
I think the parts he wrote were mainly background vocal parts. Yeah. I don't think he wrote like he just kind of sang on stuff. I don't think like he played guitar, but it wasn't. But yeah, they were completely written before we had him in. But I can see why somebody would think that, because the style change was so drastic, or pretty drastic from the previous album. So yeah.
Well, so Adam didn't record with you guys beyond self-titled, but he is credited on Grenade for the song Individuals. So I was curious, did he write that when he was still with you guys?
What I'm assuming happened is probably Adam was, you know, in the band after we recorded. Obviously, after we recorded self-titled one, we were probably continuing writing, and I'm sure he contributed to writing. We welcome his input. There was no. It wasn't like, you know, do what we say.
Yeah, like definitely, like it wasn't like we were like, hey, you know your place or
don't
something.
help us.
Yeah, it had nothing to do. It wasn't anything like that. We had him in because we liked him. He was our friend, you know, and
sure,
that's the best thing about a band is you know, chilling with the dude.
Cool. Shortly after the Grenade album, after Grenade was released, Tom decided to leave the band, which was a pretty big deal because Tom was a founding member, a songwriter, and a co-vocalist. And back then, I remember the reasons being, you know, somewhat vague and unclear. And unfortunately, Tom's not with us tonight. But is there anything you can say now about why he left the band?
I can speak to it. It was it didn't go well. It wasn't. It's the kind of a thing that I think we keep it vague because it was a difficult time. So I know I made a lot of mistakes at the time, and I think Tom would probably acknowledge that he might acknowledge that he made some mistakes as well. But the wonderful thing is we've reconciled, and there's you know, it's not like I feel a little bit of embarrassment for you know, but at the same time I think I grew through it. Like we were still relatively young, and I didn't you know, I think we all had things going on that we weren't really giving each other the benefit of the doubt. I'll say. Maybe one way to look at it, or maybe that's my perspective.
Well, Tom would go on to start a new band called FangFang, which is just also had a release from the Philadelphia Recording Service. You eventually joined the band, right, as a guitarist of FangFang. Yep. And Sarah, your wife, is in that, as well as Tom's wife as well.
Correct.
That's the band that you guys have put the most time and energy into in the last, you know, few years. And so I was just curious, did Tom, you know, start FangFang like right after he left 121, or was that something that developed later?
No, it's a good question. I don't know how soon, but it was very soon. Like the first FangFang album has several of the songs, or I would say a few of the songs at least, are sort of about or centered around our his departure from 121 and that stuff. And he tells a story that he never stopped writing songs. So when the band actually formed, I don't know, but Tom is one of these guys who he just never stops writing. I don't know when exactly FangFang started, but I think it was relatively soon after 121.
And also, it's not the first time, Kenny, that you've been in a band with your wife. I remember the Pumps.
Yes.
Weren't you in the Pumps?
I was.
Yeah.
As a short-lived band, we did. I don't know if we ever recorded, but we did write several songs.
Well, I remember you guys played at a Cornerstone, and you guys were also selling homemade T-shirts. It was like you guys had just used sponges or something to put the pumps on there. What about Vince? Vince was the drummer for 121's entire career, but he's not on the new EP. And everyone loves Vince, right? He's a phenomenal drummer. So tell us, where's Vince? What's he up to? And who did play drums on the EP?
Well, I'll take the first one about Vince. Christopher can answer the other question. Vince moved to California a long time ago. And his family's originally from California. And he's been living out there. It's got to be 10 years or more at this point. So we see him. He was coming back home, I think, once a year for his birthday. He would come and visit his mom and his family, and we would usually get to see him. And we're still in touch with him. I text with him. I was, when he first moved out there, I would talk to him on the phone a lot more often. And then, just kind of like, life just kind of changes. And we started to contact each other less and less and less. But we, whenever he comes to town, we make an effort to see him and stuff. So
we had a couple different drummers. Originally, we were just going to have one fill in, but the timeline was just not working out right. Charles from Black Rat, one of the other bands on our label, he played drums on one song. And then I had this other guy come in from our church. He's a really good, trained jazz drummer and all that. He knows nothing of punk rock, so I was really excited to see what he's going to do. I would have loved to have had Vince on everything, but it was just not going to happen because the way we recorded it was we actually spent very little time recording it. We spent more time writing it. And it would come out, I would just do a demo by myself and send it to everybody and then bring people in, kind of thing. So
Gotcha.
That's kind of how it developed.
Well, also at different times in your career, you had other players in the band for touring purposes. And I thought it would be cool to give some of these guys a shout out. I remember Matt Murdock played guitar for 121. And Matt was a Philly guy, right? He was from Fred and the Savage. If that's correct, right?
That was the Punk Rock Invasion tour with the Deal and Hanover Saints. That was our first face down sort of family tour that we did, and it was actually Matt Murdock and Andy Shaw. But yeah, those guys played guitar just for just that. It was just that one tour.
So was Andy from any other bands, or was he just a friend?
He was in a local band called Dyslexia, and actually was John Weldon in that band too, Chris?
Yes.
I want to say Tom was a youth leader at a church where Andy and John went, and that's how we knew them.
Well, I was going to mention John Weldon. You later got him on guitar. He's currently in Black Rat, which is also another Philadelphia recording service band right now. You also had Jason, that guy Jason on bass. His last name has escaped me. What's his name?
Todd.
Jason Todd. Awesome. Very good. Now, on one tour, I remember you had a young teenage kid filling in on bass.
Do you know his name?
I do not know his name. That's what I was going to ask you.
His name is Ian. man, his last name is
Sure not.
escaping. Shornock, yeah, Ian Shornock, yep.
Yeah.
That was sort of like Tom couldn't do that tour, and that was sort of like part of like the beginning of the falling out. And then Ian didn't want to do anything else with us, so we got Jason, and Jason did. I think Jason did 1 or 2 tours with us, 2 short ones, and then he and John and Vince and I formed a band after we decided to call 121 quits, kind of, because it was like it really was it was a shadow of its former self. It was none of the songwriters were the same really. I was the only songwriter that was the same, and I Christopher and Tom wrote most of the music. Tom probably wrote most of the music. Christopher wrote obviously all the guitar parts, but Tom would come in with music, and then we would build the songs on the parts that he had. And those guys, Chris and Tom, were not really. Chris was touring with Squad a lot, and Tom was no longer with us. So it's kind of like we were like, well, we can't be 121 anymore. That's not really. It just felt wrong. So we started another band. I played guitar in that band, and it was me and John Weldon, and then Jason Todd, and Vince.
And Vince as well. Okay, so 121. At one point, you also had Fred Schaefer on guitar, right, on tour.
That's right.
Fred himself from Fred and the Savages, and Red and Gold, which was another band with Sarah. And I was going to ask Kenny about Jed. There are some very old concert pictures of 121 with your friend Jedediah Sloboda on vocals instead of you. So what's the story on that? Why wasn't the front man on tour?
It's a good question. Well, I believe I had just gotten married, which would be, I've been married for 21 years now, so it was 1999. And this was another very difficult time for the band because I know that there was a feeling of betrayal, I think, that I sort of betrayed the band in a way. And it was a really hard time. I don't really remember. I tend to remember the really fun times more than anything else. So I remember it being a very difficult decision to figure out what was going to happen. I remember it being a very difficult decision to have to talk about the guys about not being able to go on tour, and then trying to figure out who was going to be a replacement if that was even going to be possible. So in a lot of ways, it's sort of like, for me, it's a dark period of the band's history, because there was a whole tour that I wasn't a part of at all. So that feels kind of weird, because there's probably people who only saw us in that tour, and it's weird to not have been a part of it. But I do know that Jed and I were really good friends, and it felt like a fine enough sort of fill-in replacement. I felt confident that he'd be able to do a good job, and they would have fun together. And I know he and Chris got along really well and stuff. So it was not ideal, and it wasn't. It's like, looking back, I think I wish things could have been different. But you have to make decisions that are difficult, and sometimes you have to make the right decision regardless of who gets hurt. So I think that was sort of how I looked at it. I was choosing, sort of my new life with my wife over the band, and it seemed like the right thing to do at the time. And I believe it. I believe it was.
Didn't Jed play in Danielson Family for a time as well?
Yeah, he played bass. I think he's in some of their videos. He's married.
Really?
He's married to Daniel's sister Megan.
One of 121's unique traits was having dual vocals between Kenny and Tom, and I've always wondered how you decided who would sing which parts. I guess this is more of a songwriting question. Did that take a lot of decision making, or was that fairly simple?
It felt like we did it was a pretty natural thing to do. Like I never felt like there was a struggle. Like, no, I have to sing this. No, you sing. It wasn't like that. I think that Tom is probably is a much better singer than I am. So parts that required more of a stricter sort of adherence to melody or something like that, like those were going to be Tom's parts for sure.
Yeah.
So those things sort of came, like it felt real natural and easy. And bands we love like do that. I think that's where that influence comes. Where their influence might come in, like Fugazi sort of has 2 lead singers, and I always loved that about their band. I always thought that was like, I mean, they're one of my favorite bands. So
your lyrics have always been, very Bible-based and theological. And I've wondered about the inspiration for your lyrics. Kenny, I believe you went to Bible college for a time. You've mentioned that before. And I'm just curious, was your lyrical content just from reading the Bible a lot and knowing the scriptures, or were your studies in college having a big influence on your lyrics?
I'll confess, it's probably not from me reading the Bible a lot, because I don't read the Bible a lot. My time at Bible college, I was obviously reading the Bible and just commentaries and all kinds of things, way more than I'd ever had in my life. And for the self-titled album, it was probably a lot of inspiration came from being in class and listening to lectures and debating with friends and that kind of a thing.
Don't listen to the media and the lies they've been feeding you. Like a snake, they're deceiving you to the ends from the media.
I have a couple of fan questions regarding Grenade. One fan says that Grenade is his favorite album, and he asks what the fan reception was like. From your perspective, did fans seem to like Grenade?
How was Grenade received? I think it was received poorly. That was always my take on it. I think it was reviled. If that's not too strong of a word, I think it was something we were really proud of. I think it was really fun to record. I think the songs were cool. It seemed like, it felt like the most like fun and creative thing we'd ever done. And I liked it a lot. Like I love some of the songs on it, like Grenade or Communion and Two Sides is Fine. And I don't know, I really like it. And I'm glad anybody thought it was their favorite one. That's kind of an interesting perspective. I think most people who like the Dragon album probably just couldn't take it. It just didn't go well. Like Face Down didn't like it. I don't think.
Oh, really?
I don't think so at all. I don't think Jason even wanted to put it out. That's my opinion. He never said that, but that's sort of like how I felt about it, because their label was like so hardcore, and the punk rock part of his label never really took off like he expected it to. Like, and what we did, like that album is so much different than even the album before it, and definitely different than like The Deal or The Hanover Saints.
Another question that's kind of related to this. This was another fan question. They said, what inspired the switch from a fast, hardcore punk vibe to a more rock and roll sound? And that question may be referencing the self-titled album a little bit, as well as Grenade. I'm not really sure where in the progression he's asking. But how would you respond to that question?
We started writing songs, and we felt like we could still write a tough punk rock song without having to be blazing fast. I don't remember it being a conscious decision. It felt like we were just writing songs in the same way. We were just kind of like, they were just turning out different because we felt they sounded better.
It was definitely a natural progression, but like I think it was due to our influences and stuff too. Like we definitely liked like songs. Like I think of all the songs that we really liked. The punk rock songs, like when and like Fugazi, like even like on "Don't Fear the Liars," like the last one, Sprint's line, like those kind of lines where they kind of bring down, adds dynamic to the song. I think like I loved like the Who, I loved like, which they were just so dynamic and amazing. Like I loved that. I loved the Clash. And when I realized what I really liked about a lot of those songs was like melody and like cool parts, like cool parts where it was like, it would come down to something real cool and then just be real dynamic and go into something big. Kind of like what I feel like we always try to do. And it's like, it's regardless of genre, like there was no conscious decision. It was just a progression based on our influences. And as we've started to write more cool songs, we started to see more like what I thought of as cool songs, like Nothing to Lose on the self-titled record or something like that, or Smells Like Death, where it was just like, what are these weird, like kind of like down parts, and they're kind of like, they're not super rocking the whole time. And it would leave room for those things to happen, and it would have more of an impact. So the more we like experimented with going into like melody and like other rhythms and stuff like that and slower songs, the more I think we just kind of like we realize that's kind of what we want to be like, and that's kind of what Grenade, kind of like the weird progression of that record is. So it's just so strange. Like if you listen to the first record, Dragon, and then just jump to that like randomly into the middle of it somewhere, you'd be like, this is not the same band.
Well, I have to say, I mean, for me personally as a fan, I never really saw your guys' progression as some huge deviation away from, your sound. I mean, your older albums all had kind of rock and roll elements to them, the song Everybody Has It from Dragon, I mean, that's just a straight up rock and roll song,
Yeah.
So I thought any changes were pretty fitting and organic and made a lot of sense, in my opinion, the songs that had the most notable changes, I guess, at least on Grenade, were the last three songs on Grenade. There Shall Come a Day, Giants in the Land, and Bosman.
And Bosman, yeah.
Yeah. So to me, those were kind of the more, I don't know if we'd call those rock and roll. They're very unique, and they're hard to put a label on for that reason. For those three songs in particular, like how do you guys see those in comparison to the rest of your catalog?
Well, I real quick, it's funny you mentioned those songs because there's I found on YouTube there's a video of us playing at Cornerstone, Florida, and we opened that tour. Jason Todd was on that tour, and John Weldon, bass and guitar, and we opened that set, like the set we wrote for that tour. We opened with There Shall Come a Day. That was the first song on the of our set, and there's a video of that song on YouTube, a live video from Cornerstone, Florida. And one guy, this kind of goes back to your question about how was Grenade received. Somebody wrote a comment on it. It's a really long comment, and I thumbs it down just because. He said this is a band who was a great punk band, and then they put out a crap album like Grenade with all the, and he's just scathing, like just destroying us, right? And he's entitled to his opinion. He could like whatever he wants. He's like, this always happens to all the best bands. Like they always, they change their style to, he's like telling. It was hilarious. Like obviously I thought it was hilarious. And
I wonder if that guy will watch this interview, and I wonder how he'll feel knowing that you gave him a thumbs down.
Dude, I hope he watches it. I would love to. I would love to, because it's just to me it's just hysterical. But
yeah.
It's more reason why I believe that album wasn't well received. It didn't sell well or anything like that. But those three songs I think are interesting. Like Bosman was an interesting one because it was like I don't even know how we wrote it. It was like I think we had the part that bam 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 on it, like that part we had, and then we wrote the chorus and Christopher came in and all that guitar solo is just one take. I think it might have been the first time he heard the song. Like it was like very like weird song to record. And you know, we're both big Dinosaur Jr. fans, and I think that kind of comes out in that song a little bit, not intentionally. I think it's just because I mean, I feel like it was written mostly in the studio. Even maybe it was like it was a weird song for us to do. And then the other two, Giants in the Land and There Will Come a Day, or There Shall Come a Day, whatever it's called. Yeah, definitely just like weird. I mean, Giants is a really weird song. I feel like There Shall Come a Day is kind of a little more straightforward. It's kind of aggressive. It's a little bit strange, but Giants has like that, like just weird parts to it. It's like it has like a cool groove. I think I like that song. I like that song a lot. I don't know. We played it live almost every show, I think, you know, after we wrote it. But
I remember being very excited for some reason, about that song. Like the record to me being like eclectic, like that was kind of like just really cool. So it was like,
Right.
I was like, here's a weird song. I like it. And I kind of like the idea of surprising people too. Like you couldn't put us in a box.
Okay, so the band toured after Grenade for a little bit, but then the band eventually came to an end. And so Grenade ended up being your last album. And I have another fan question. They asked, was Grenade a goodbye album consciously? And I've never thought that it was, but explore that a little bit. When you guys were recording Grenade, were there any indications that it might be your last album?
not that I remember. I don't remember thinking that at all.
I don't. It was definitely not, because it was not a goodbye thing. And I remember having high hopes for our next thing that we never even got started on. 121 somehow, I think Squad's manager gave it to somebody, and the Grenade album, and they loved, somebody at Interscope really loved it. And there was going to be like I know they were doing development deals at the time. Like they were allowing bands to do like EPs and stuff like that. I don't know if you remember the Letter Kills guys. Remember Letter Kills?
Squad did a tour with them, right?
Yeah. They were on like Interscope or whatever island. I think it's the same label. But apparently that it was going to be a similar kind of thing, and they liked 121, and but it never happened, obviously. But I think that was all kind of going on when Grenade was kind of like came out. And I have a different take on Grenade too. I think that Kenny always says that it wasn't well received, but I think it was well received just by a different crowd. Like I think it didn't sell well, but nothing was really selling well at the time. Band friends thought it was the best thing they ever did. Like most people in bands, critically acclaimed or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
it was more like that I thought than the other stuff. I think like the guys from you know, the Kick loved it, and yeah, they thought it was really great, and like a lot of people told me that they really liked it, like the guys from The Blamed, and yeah, so.
Well, it's funny, even though Grenade was not consciously a goodbye album, I thought about that a little bit, and it hit me that the chorus to Individuals on that album was goodbye, goodbye, goodbye to rock and roll. So maybe there's some providential irony in that.
Yeah, that's funny. I never thought about that. That's fun. That's a funny idea. Like, yeah.
Well, when 121 officially ended, Kenny and Vince started a new band called Kill Hands. Kenny, you've already alluded to Kill Hands. That was formed with John and Jason, who had been touring members of 121. You know, with Kill Hands, we said released that demo song, played a few shows in Philly, but it didn't really go far beyond that. And so I'm curious, you know, what was the goal for Kill Hands, and why was it so short-lived?
I don't know what the goal. I don't really know what the goal was. I don't know if there was a maybe it was just a little bit of like pride just to say like we're just going to keep going, you know, like we're not like I don't have to stop doing because 121 is gone or something like that. I don't know. I still had songs, you know, I had lyrics and stuff, and it was just it didn't feel right to continue as 121. So we just created Kill Hands and just started playing shows, and like we all still wanted to play music together. We all liked each other. We were friends, and you know, John was writing songs, I was writing songs, and we just kept playing, and it was fun. I mean, I think we did, like I said, like we did really well. Like our shows were, we played for, I don't know, maybe 2 years, maybe, I don't know, but like our shows were pretty well attended. Like it was good. We had to open up for Electric Six at in Philadelphia, which was kind of like a big deal for us. It was like the biggest show we ever got to play, and yeah.
Okay, so 121 has ended, Kill Hands has ended. Bring us to from the end of that era to now. So basically, what have you guys been doing for the last 15 years? Kris, right around when Squad 5-0 was ending and 121 was ending, you played guitar on a Raised by Wolves album, which was of Billy Bones from the Blackjacks and the Pirates. You played guitar with them at a Cornerstone. And I think in Philly, you played some shows with Adam and Dave's Bloodline.
It's true.
But what else? Any other projects you've been doing in the meantime? Or have you just been laying low, working, enjoying the family life?
I did do a bit of that. I did play with Me Without You for a couple shows.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
That's cool.
I'm good friends with Mike and Aaron. Like I think I played like 3 or maybe 4 shows with them. And then I did like 2. I recorded like 2 songs with them. We did Sleazer too, the Weezer cover band. I don't know, as nerdy as you can sound. It was Greg, Mike, and Ricky, and Pete, and we had and me. I played bass on a lot of it, but I played guitar on some of it too. And it was just a house show, and then we did another one at I think the same venue you saw Speed of Delivery at, and they were both amazing shows. And I think we did a really good job learning. We did the first 2 Weezer albums, basically like all the best songs off of those, and that was fun. But yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. We did a lot of church music. A lot of.
You mean for your church, like?
For the church, but we in our way. Kenny and Sarah and my wife Jamie and I, we all started this a worship team. But it was more like a punk rock version of like the Carter Family or something. It was kind of like wild. And we did that. So and I think I note that because I think it was pretty cool. We did all old hymns. We didn't do anything. And it didn't sound like Mumford & Sons, if you're wondering. It sounded kind of like Ramones playing bluegrass or something weird with chicks singing, you know. It's cool. It was cool. And Kenny and I did vocals as well. So it was kind of wild.
Well, Kenny, what about you? Other than eventually joining FangFang, what's life been like for you for the past 15 years?
Yeah. I've been married. I have 3 children. My oldest daughter is 15. So that's been, I've had 15 years. I've been a father, and yeah, it's been mostly just like we've building a life, building a family, a business. I'm a board member of the Philadelphia Master Plumbers Association. Just doing that pretty much. Just
awesome.
Just working a lot, and going to church. I'm pretty involved at church and stuff like that. So yeah,
awesome.
It's been it's good. Life is good.
That's great. Well, so this is go ahead, Kris.
I have 3 kids as well, and I have a wife, and I too have building a life and a business. Kenny and I are competing. No.
Okay, well, this is going to kind of be a broad question, but I wanted to ask you what your reflections are on the Christian scene in general from back in the day, you know, and, you know, like the parts of the scene that you guys were involved in. Are there certain pros or cons that come to your mind when you think back? A lot of people look back with joyfulness and nostalgia, and others look back with a lot of criticism. And I just wondered what your perspective is on that.
I went through a long period, and it was just probably just being immature or whatever, not to try to sound overly humble or whatever, but like you don't really know what you're kind of in when you're in it in the moment. Like it's kind of rare that I think you don't, in that moment, I didn't understand what it was. I didn't look at it as special or anything. And then eventually I kind of think after I stopped playing in the bands and stuff, I kind of got, I kind of just had like a memory of it's like being corny and stuff like that at times. And probably like some of the stuff we did was dumb and who knows what. Because I associate it with things that I don't know why they had negative, any negativity attached to them. But then I kind of started to, you know, listen to the records again that we did. Listening to them, I was like, you know what? I kind of had it in my head that this was kind of dumb or whatever. And then like eventually it just started to kind of like, I don't know if it's just nostalgia, but I just started to really like it. And then some of the stuff I did, I was proud of. But on a broad like view of the whole scene, I think it was a pretty there were a lot of negative things, just like with anything else. But I really think it was a really, really special thing that probably might not ever happen again. And I think that it was cooler than a lot of scenes like other kind of scenes I've seen people be a part of. It was more special because of that kind of spiritual connection, I think, was there for certain aspects of it. Even though it's very flawed, just like anything else, because we're all humans. But I think it was a really neat, special time. Like I would say from 96 to 2002, it was like just really, I don't know. There was no scene like it, you know, and sure, some of it was corny. Like, I don't know, maybe some of the other bands were corny, or some people might think playing at a church was corny, but I don't really care about that stuff. I don't really like, I look at that as just like what's the alternative? Like we probably wouldn't have had a scene or we would have just been playing in bars all the time, which that kind of sucks, you know? We did that too. We did it, you know, one night we'd be in a church, one night in a bar or something. And, or you'd be on tour with a Christian band and then like a non-Christian band, you know, but I think the Christian scene from that time period that I was talking about, I just think that there's something really neat about it. Like, I don't know, something special. And I don't know if it'll happen again. Probably not.
What we like with what Christopher said is like, there was something special and fun about our you know, our late teens through our 20s was like just a really fun time. And that you know, getting to go to Cornerstone and seeing all your friends from all around the country in one place was really, really great. Playing, you know, getting the opportunity to play music, like, I don't know. I mean, that to me, that was just, it was surreal. It was like, it felt, you know, I don't know. It was just a lot of fun. Like I look back at those times with great fondness. I think that they were really, really fun and really good. I think that you can take, you know, I'm sort of like by nature an optimist. So, I'm sure that there are a lot of things that were bad about that, you know, from a spiritual perspective to musical perspective. There's probably all kinds of negatives all the way across the board. But to me, like I'm choosing to remember the good parts about it, or the things that I liked about it. Like,
Yeah.
You know, to me, there was so much. There was plenty of joy and goodness with what we were able to do. I don't know. I love it. Like, I don't look at it as being anything but a great joy in my life, and something I'm just really, really thankful for. That I feel really, really lucky and really blessed. You know, whatever terms you want to use. Like, you know, fortunate. I don't know why I got to be part of it, but I'm glad that I did, and I cherish it. I think it's cool. I'm
right there with you, Ken.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it took me a while to get to you to like. You don't seem like you ever stopped liking it. I think I just kind of took a break from it, and I kind of like. I think I was influenced by people around me that kind of just like, yeah, that was crap, you know, or whatever. But and I kind of bought into it, but well, not really. But I kind of maybe did a little bit, and I kind of ignored it a little bit, and it kind of was like kind of afraid to revisit it. But when I did, and then I hear kind of like, you know, and then I remember all the people, and I'm listening to their records, you know, like the Blamed and a lot of guys that we knew.
That was one question I was going to ask was, you know, specifically bands from the scene back then. I know you guys were friends with a ton of bands.
Yeah.
You know, what were some of the bands that you genuinely enjoyed listening to? You know, like you weren't just friends, but you loved their music.
Christopher and I were just talking about this on Friday, I think. Right, Chris?
Yeah.
The Huntingtons were a band I honestly enjoyed listening to.
I still put them on sometimes. But Huntington's we were friends with, but we also liked their band a lot. And I liked the Kick a lot.
Yep.
And they're great friends as well. And who else, Ken?
I mean, I liked I loved the I liked Billy Bones bands. I liked the Pirates, and I liked what was the other one? The Blackjacks, yeah. Those were bands that I actually listened to. That one, Blackjacks, the first song on that one, I think their first release is just is it called Streetlight or something?
Yeah,
it's
Streetlight.
Like such a great song. It's called that song is just a jam, and that I love.
I liked the Blamed as well. I loved I think that was one of the first Tooth and Nail records I got.
Another band that we weren't friends with, but we like listened to, that I like listening to a lot, was 6 Feet Deep. I don't know if you remember.
Oh wow! Yeah, that goes back.
Yeah, that was like I never got to know any of those guys. I would never met them, anything like that. But I did like listen to the bands, and a lot of bands here, like bands we toured with, like I felt like I didn't have to listen to a lot of music because I heard them every night, you know. So like The Deal, like I know a lot of their songs, but like I didn't really listen to the record. I just would watch them play on tour, and it was, I mean, I thought they were a great band. I loved. I actually been listening to them more recently, actually, just for the fun of it, and they got some good jams. I like the Hanover Saints. That was another band that I actually liked listening to as well. I really like the first Mercury Radio Theater album. It's really cool. Yeah, I think that's pretty. And the Colemans, I really like the Colemans. I just showed my kids the Colemans not long ago. They liked it. Was it 4, 5, 6, 7 or 5, 6, 7, 8 dance? I forget what it's called, but
you guys have already alluded to some of your like your church life, things like that. But I was wondering just about your faith, your beliefs. It appears that you're still within the Christian faith. Are there things that you look back maybe at older lyrics, or something, and you say, oh, I don't really view things that way anymore? Or are you still pretty much, on the same path that you'd say you always were?
I don't feel like I believe much differently than I did. I like to think my views are refined and I'm smarter and wiser. But I mean, my faith is still, I still am a believer. I'm a Christian. I attend a Christian church, and I don't. I couldn't speak to all the lyrics of everything we've ever done because I don't really remember all of them. I'm sure there are things that I probably would like to say differently maybe today if I had the chance, but I don't know if I necessarily believe them differently. I like to think that I'm a little more a better Christian today than I would have been back then. I think, but yeah, I mean, I still believe in Jesus Christ and the Bible as being the infallible Word of God. So those things haven't really changed.
I think we're losing Kenny. Unfortunately, he is hung up on us.
Yeah, I'm still on the same path. I've changed a lot, though. I definitely become. I feel like things have become more clear to me now, and just having kids and being married and things definitely have become more clear as far as what I believe in biblical truths. And I would say I believe it with all my heart, and like it's just more clear than before. I think I wasn't, not that I didn't believe, but I think it's just like I really feel like I got on the instead of hopping off the train, I got on. I got on. You know what I mean?
On the new EP, there is some mild profanity on one song, which is different from what 21 has done in the past. And I guess not really being in a Christian scene anymore and owning your own label kind of gives you the freedom to do those types of things.
Yeah, I think funny. I'm glad you brought that up. Tom wrote those, which might be surprising to you. And it's funny, the one thing that we felt okay with about it, with that, Tom was still apprehensive, like when he brought the lyrics, but it was just kind of like one of those things. It's like it's an art, it's an art form. It came out of like the theme of the song. So the song is kind of about. I believe it's mainly about group think and like kind of like mob mentality with you have to think this certain way or you're one of them, you're going to be cast out. And it's kind of like so it's spoken from that perspective. So the curse words could be much harsher actually if we were true to the the crowd that it's kind of speaking of. And
right. There was one last fan question, and it was directed toward you. So I thought I would ask this, and it's more on the humorous side. But the question is, do you still keep in touch with Marcus Price? And if so, is he as wild as he was back in 2003?
He's wild. Yes. He's a great guy. He's a photographer for like all these famous comedians now. Like, so he's on like Instagram. He's got like a ton of he's got quite a following, I think. And I assumed he was one of your alter egos. The characters you used to create, like Wicked Nightlife, and yeah, I remember Wicked Nightlife because you actually had a Zanga page for Wicked. I remember that. Wicked, yeah, and we called him Wicked for short. And Wicked was like a persona that was this suit. It was all yellow. So whoever put the suit on was Wicked, but that was kind of the idea. And Marcus and I remember, I think we went out and I think I had it on for a minute, and then we changed, and then he put it on, and we went into Johnny Rockets on South Street. I hold the door for him, and he says stops and kind of says real loud in front of the door, in front of everybody in the whole restaurant. He says Wicked is in, and and people look at him and just kind of continue on. It's not a big deal. I'm like, all right, come on, Wicked. and like we go, you know, like we spent a good time, a good couple hours, like being totally ridiculous in Philadelphia, wearing that suit.
So we've got Kenny back, but unfortunately it's just through cell phone audio. So Kenny, is there any last words you'd like to say before you take off?
Well, Adam, thanks a lot for doing this, man. This has been a lot of fun. I can't believe that you have, like, it's humbling to think that there was any quote unquote fan questions. That's kind of exciting and fun. I really appreciate it.
The EP, Say It Loud, from Philadelphia Recording Service. It can be found on all music platforms, and I'll put links in the description on where you can find it. The label also has new releases from FangFang, Black Rat, and Kris, your band with your wife Jamie, the Liberandos.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So that's the studio owners themselves project, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And so we talked about you're also advertising future releases by Faraway Eyes and Hymn Service. And Faraway Eyes is a new Dave Peterson project, which is pretty exciting. Dave is a phenomenal songwriter. Dave was from Blaster and Squad and Bloodline.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I think people are gonna like that one.
Well, I think it's great, man. I think the EP is cool. I think what you're doing with the studio is awesome. I wish you the best of luck with it. And again, thank you for all of your kindness to me over the years, and especially for doing this interview. I think it's great. And also for our viewers, if you want to subscribe to this channel, I have some live 121 footage that I plan to digitize and upload soon. So please be on the lookout for that. And with that, we can wrap things up. Kris, thanks a lot.
Adam, thank you so much.